Today's episode is brought to you in part by Coinbase, America's largest digital currency exchange with over 13 million active users. Folks, if you're following me on Snapchat, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, you've probably seen me talking about Bitcoin or cryptocurrency. It is changing the world. It is changing the way we buy and sell things. You probably heard me talk about just a couple years ago, Bitcoin was valued at just under $400, and today, as I speak, it's valued at over $9,700. There is still time to get in, and Coinbase has worked out a special arrangement with our listeners where if you text Coinbase, that's COINBASE, to 555-888, again, text Coinbase, COINBASE, to 555-888. Learn how you can get $10 worth of free Bitcoin. It's free to join, and it's America's largest digital currency exchange. Again, text Coinbase to 555-888 and learn how to get $10 worth of free Bitcoin. All right. Well, my name is Michael Alden. We are here in Blue Vase Studios. Again, I'm super excited. I'm always excited to do this because I get to talk to people. I get to interact with people that are out there doing some great things. Thought leaders, business people, entrepreneurs, and it's just, for me, it's just I joke around and I say it's almost like getting like my PhD in business or just it's like going to Wharton. Dealing with the people that come on my podcast. My next guest, his name is Chris Wirth. I met him a while ago. He's actually the founder of No Quit Living. It's a training, speaking, and coaching company that works with individuals, teams, and corporations to really help motivate and inspire them. He's also the host of the No Quit Living podcast, which I'm a huge fan of. It's been ranked in the top 10, I think, at one point. It's one of the fastest growing, as far as I'm concerned, podcasts. Great guest. He's doing some great things. In fact, I'm going to talk to him a little bit. I want him to give me the secrets to his success and what he's done and how he's gone so quickly kind of to the top of the podcasting world. Chris, thanks so much for being my guest, man.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me. Honor and pleasure is all mine.
Well, so we met a while ago. Actually, I was on your podcast first, which was awesome. So thank you for doing that. Tell us a little bit about your background. Kind of how you got in this. I mean, I think you also come from the financial world. How did you get into this? World of working with individuals and teams and companies and helping them kind of grow and prosper. How'd that all happen?
So a few years ago, I got certified as a speaker, trainer, and coach through the first ever John Maxwell certification program down in Florida. And I was doing it for selfish reasons as far as my financial company, because I coached a lot of junior partners and I was doing a lot of speaking in big venues of 100, 200 plus people. And I wanted to just become a better version of myself. Fast forward a year or two, I created the company No Quit Living. I started working with individuals, corporations, and then within the last year, I launched my podcast in April of this year, and I've started now working also with a couple of college basketball teams, which has been really fascinating. And the two things we focus on are accountability and self-accountability. And I think most people in general miss the target with that, and it's pretty simplistic when you think about it, but it's pretty important that, and I feel it gets often overlooked, and it can be the difference of just a slight tweak here and a slight tweak there could have a really significant impact, not only on your bottom line, but also with everything you're doing personally as well as professionally.
You're talking about accountability, right?
Yes, sir.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, all right. That makes a lot of sense. I want to back up though, real quick, because I got to be honest. I have kind of hated a little bit on organizations like John Maxwell that quote certify people in speaking, and then they try and they certify people to become successful. And then they're going out and teaching other people. So, but here's the interesting thing about you is that, and this is why I wasn't planning on going down this path, but I think we're going to go there. So, you already were a successful guy. You're already in this world. You're already doing some good things, and then you go off and you get the certification. The thing that I have a pet peeve with, and I don't know, we'll see how you feel about this, is that when people take like the John Maxwells, or I had Les Brown on my podcast, or even some of these other ones, and they go out and they take these training courses, and then they go out and try and teach other people, but they've never done anything. For you, it made sense, right? But how do you feel about that? Like, you get some guy right out of college who's never done anything, takes the John Maxwell course, and then he goes out and tries and teaches other people how to be successful. to me, I just think it's not real.
Yeah, we talked about this a little bit when you were on my podcast, and I understand where you're coming from, and I can't disagree or argue in the sense of some of the certification programs. I don't want to speak poorly on anybody's program that I don't know, so I'll avoid doing that. The John Maxwell program for me, and the reason I went ahead and did it through John's program is I was a big fan of his early on, and I read one of his books, Today Matters, and it just had a profound impact on me. And when I had the opportunity to get certified, I was doing it from a I believe, a different place, because a lot of the people that do these certification programs teach that actual knowledge from that individual or from that company. And for me, I wanted to get the certification to be a better speaker, trainer, and coach for myself. I personally don't teach on
Uh-oh, we're losing you again.
Sorry, you losing me?
Yep, there we go. So we lost you. I had you at. I don't personally teach on.
Okay, gotcha. So I don't personally teach on John's material, and I'm a big fan of his. I read every book of his that comes out, and I subscribe to emails and things. But my point, and to your comment where I think you're head on, is you need to have some experience in life, I believe. And it doesn't mean you need to have 10, 20, 30 years of experience. But I think if you just take a certification program or an online course, it doesn't make you a professional in the sense of you can say that you're the best of the best. But I think the next thing you need to do is you need to apply it. For example, you need to go out and work with people and start small. And I think that's the one thing that I think people miss the boat on is they take these programs and they get certified or they become an expert in this field or that field. But I think where they miss the target is you need to go out and you need to go and train and you need to get out there. So, for example, if you want to be a college basketball player, you don't just wake up one day as a senior in high school and say, I'm going to play college basketball next year. You'd have to play high school basketball and play in middle school and play AAU. And you and I have spoken about sports, and I know you played college sports as well. So I think that's where people miss the boat a little bit in regards to putting in the actual time in addition to the certification. And I want to be very clear that those certification programs and those courses are amazing, but you then need to take it to the next level, I think, to really deliver to your clients as well as your prospective clients.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, for someone like you or even someone like me, like I thought about maybe like Les Brown was on my podcast and, he invited me to come, take one of his speaking courses. And I'm, we kind of cut from the same cloth where I know if I went to that, I could certainly have learned a lot from Les Brown or even John Maxwell and, learning about, maybe different speaking styles and techniques and selling techniques from the stage and all these other different things. But yeah, I mean, so I think, if you have some sort of life experience, like you said, you're not just going to go from high school, so from waking up to college ball, you got to put in the work before you can take that training. I think those things are definitely have great value, and I'm not like knocking, John Maxwell but I just feel as though and I know you've run into him, right? We've run into, and it's scary because, look, so someone goes to you, they go to noquitliving.com. And they find you or they listen to your podcast. I think you're everywhere. I know you're definitely on iTunes. You're on all the different podcast platforms. They listen to No Quit Living. They like you. They're like, you know what? I'm going to go to Chris. I want to talk to Chris. I want to work with him. I want to hire him and to have him, motivate my team, my company. And it makes sense because you've lived through some stuff, right? You're actually doing real stuff. And that training, like you said, kind of really strengthened what you already have. But the sad part, like I said, is you got people out there that are just not, they created an Instagram account, a Twitter account, a Facebook account, and they bought a bunch of followers. And now all of a sudden, because they took John Maxwell's course, they're out there telling the world that they can teach them how to be successful. That's kind of what I'm getting at, right? I mean,
no, and we talked about that when you were a guest on my show. Is the difference of doing it versus wanting to do it. And I think that's where the disconnect is. Sometimes people want to skip some of the steps, and obviously this is not everybody.
Right.
But to your point, I think some of those life lessons are invaluable, and this is not a knock against any coaching program, any certification, even any webinar out there. There's a very significant difference, I feel, between life experience, actually coaching somebody, a team, coaching an organization, versus reading about it and finding out a little bit. That's invaluable in itself as far as the knowledge, but I think you also have to then put it into action.
Right. And again, I don't want to belabor this point too much. I think there's great value in a lot of those different things. And I've sat in on webinars and sat in on trainings and gone to seminars in worlds that I'm already in. And a lot of the stuff I quote already know, but I think there's a great value in there in like refreshing, and also you're going to pick up things that you might not already have known. So I'm not saying I don't necessarily disagree with the value in it. It's just, I think that, you want to go to someone like yourself who has, been in business for a while, has been doing some good things, and, has life experience, because I think that, if we had two people, right, if we had, you who took the John Maxwell course, and then you had someone fresh out of college and took the John Maxwell course, same exact course, same time, same training, same amount of money, I'm going to tell someone to go to you because of life experience. So I don't want to, I don't want to waste too much more time on that. But so let's talk about podcasting a little bit, because when I was first on your podcast, I was kind of new into this whole world, and I think that the podcasting world is exploding. And you and I, and by the way, I just want to give everybody a little asterisk and caveat here. So Chris and I have become good friends since I was on his podcast, and he also endorsed my book, Blueprint to Business. So just for those of you to think that this just randomly happened, it didn't. So, but I want to talk. I'm intrigued because I'm watching this guy. He's doing some great things. Podcasting, and I think I'm a little jealous of like what he's doing. So I want to talk about I actually just did a podcast of this myself. So maybe you can give a secret, and I don't think it's really a secret, but I think a lot of people need to hear it. So you want to get somebody on your podcast. How does it happen?
I get asked that so many times, and I think to my credit, I've been fortunate to have a lot of guests that I don't think I deserved yet in this early on. And my secret, very simple, is I connect with people in a genuine professional way. And I don't in any way, shape, or form say or imply that other people don't. But what I've found very different about my approach is that if you ask somebody for something selfishly, hey, Mike, can you give me $100? That's very different than if you reach out in a way. And the reason that you and I connected is I read your book, 5% More, and I loved it. I gave it to some of my junior guys. I've quoted it. I've talked about it a lot. And I reached out to you in a very honest and real way because I appreciated your book. I had no idea if you'd even be interested in coming on the show. When I responded to you and when I reached out to you the first time, that wasn't even my number one objective. It was just to reach out to you because I really enjoyed your book and I got a lot out of it. So my secret is really simple. Is in today's day and age, everybody knows the concept of 6 degrees of separation. I believe in today's day and age, where technology is and where it's going, it's 1 degree of separation. So, for example, I found your business, I got your website, and I reached out to you. You reached out to me, and it's pretty simple. And the reason that I think people miss the boat is they just send out all these connections, and they just want to connect with anybody. And I think if you just connect with anybody in any way, shape, or form, I don't think it's as genuine as really trying to connect with somebody and have a relationship before. And to your comment, you and I have spoken many times since then, and we've developed a friendship and a relationship that was based on the fact that, honestly, I just enjoyed your book, and I got a lot out of it. And ever since I was little, I've been a big reader, and I believe in personal development and trying to become the best version of yourself. But any time I read something or watch something that's had an impact on me, I always reach out to that person, ideally with a personal handwritten note, because that's the way I connect best, because I feel it leaves the best impression on that person, knowing that I thought enough about their book or their movie or their course that I really wanted to reach out to them, and in a nice way, and also in a very different way, thank them.
Yeah, I think it's great. I mean, what you said is, you have a genuine interest, right, in that person, which I think is important, rather than just connecting with anybody, right? And you're also just like you said, you don't even necessarily go in with any sort of motive. But I liked one of the secrets, and that is not a secret, but I think it's tried and true. Is an actual handwritten note. Brian Buffini was on my podcast. He wrote the book The Immigrant Edge, and I think he has the largest real estate training course in the world. And that's one of the things he talks about is just an actual handwritten note. Nobody gets them anymore. And it's just like a little thing. I mean, you could do all the stuff that we all do, LinkedIn and Twitter and Instagram, but, to go that extra mile, right, Chris, really just kind of, you're going to get somebody's attention when you do that, right?
It's interesting that you say that, Mike, because to me, what does it really cost? It costs $1 for a nice piece of stationery. You don't have to go out and get personalized and spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars, but it costs $1 and maybe 3 minutes of your time. But to your point, it has a profound impact because for me, the only thing I get in the mail are bills. Right.
Yeah. I actually just got something in the mail. I get things. I would say now I do get people sending me all sorts of stuff. But then for me, it's like, okay, so how unique can they be? And I just got something a couple days ago, and I actually posted it on Snapchat. It was in a shiny gold, flexible kind of package, and I was like, wow. I'm like, I'm gonna open that. Like, that's pretty cool, So there are also definitely a lot of different unique things you can do to connect with people. So, all right, I want to ask you this part. And
you're welcome. You're welcome, by the way, for that shiny gold object.
Was that you? No, that wasn't you who sent that. Was it you? Oh, I don't think it was.
No, it wasn't.
I think I asked you this before, and he didn't want to answer me. So I want to put him on the spot now and see if he'll answer me. And this one, 'cause this might be the secret sauce, and this is the stuff that sometimes we just don't want to tell people because we figured it out, and it's so awesome, and it's hard to do, and it costs millions of dollars sometimes. So all right, I'm really starting to get into this whole podcasting world and the financial side of it and the marketing side of it. Okay, I own a big marketing company. I sell books. This is what I do. How do you market a podcast? Specifically a podcast. Can you answer that? Can you give us some details? This is really, got to be honest with you, my own selfish interest right now. I want to know because I think you were just, all right, so you were just in Inc. magazine as one of the top 6 podcasts, right? Was it Inc.? I think it was, right?
Top 8. Yeah, top 8.
Top 8 podcasts to listen to, which is unbelievable for that. That stuff doesn't just happen. And which is we could talk a little bit about how that happened, but that's just pretty awesome. And then I think at one point you were top 10, and I know it fluctuates all the time on iTunes. But how does it happen? Like how do you get to that so quickly? Because it has been quick. I know you've been around for a while, but I know this podcast is relatively new. How does it happen?
I just got asked that this morning. I was on another podcast, and I wish that I could give you an actual secret sauce as far as what I've done specifically where I can attribute one thing.
No, you don't. You are not. He is totally. He's going to avoid the question. Don't you? Just say I'm not going to tell you.
No, I'm not going to avoid the question. I'm going to tell you the God's honest truth.
All right.
I wish, and the reason I wish that there was one thing, because if there was one thing, I could then duplicate, market that, and sell it to every single up-and-coming podcaster, and I would have a unbelievably financially successful company. So all jokes aside, what I can share with your listeners and anybody that's thinking about possibly launching a podcast or taking theirs to the next level is the biggest thing that I've done is I've tried many different things. So I have a Facebook page. I have a YouTube page. I've put out videos. I've sent an inordinate amount of emails to guests that have agreed to come on. And the reason I say inordinate is I do it in a professional manner. But, for example, if I reached out to you and you didn't respond, I'm not going to give you an hour or 5 minutes and I'm going to call you and text you. I'll try in another week or two. I'll try in a different way. But the other thing I've asked people to do in a very honest way is every guest I get on the show is I have a conversation with them before and after. And I ask them 2 things, every single guest. The first thing is, if you know of anybody else that has a great no-quit story, I'd love for an introduction if you know that person and think it's appropriate. That's the first thing. Everybody is very appreciative when I say that because I'm not just saying, hey, Mike, open up your phone and introduce me to these 20 people. I'm doing it in an honest way and very professional where if you knew somebody and said, hey, Chris, this guy, Bill, great story. My next thing would say, hey, Mike, if you think it's appropriate, I'd love an introduction, however you feel is best fit. And then the second thing I ask everybody is if they would please share their episodes throughout their social media platforms and ask their listeners in a nice way if they like the episode, if they got value, to please subscribe to the podcast as well as give it a 5-star review because that helps us get our message out there. And I know it may sound simplistic and it's not the answer you want, because I know you're a competitive guy and we've talked offline about different things. But what I've found in this space is it's just the constant continual movement of getting the ball from the 50 to the 45 to the 40 to the 35. And that's where I think a lot of people in the podcast world, I don't want to say miss the boat, but in some ways I think miss the boat, because they think that if you get a great guest like Mike Alden or John Lee Dumas, that all of a sudden your podcast is going to go to the top 20 rankings. And it might for that day or two, but the podcast world and sponsorship, and as you mentioned, marketing and advertising, it's all about the marathon, not the sprint.
Yeah, all right. No, it makes sense. I think you're right, man. I tell you, as I actually wrote it down, and one of the things that I have not done a good job at with my podcast is I haven't asked those questions, and I wrote a book called Ask More, Get More, and I haven't even. I just started to say, hey, it's basically what you said. Look, if you like it, if it's adding value, and I'm saying it right now, folks. If you're listening right now, if you're listening to Chris Wirth, he's also has his own podcast called No Quit Living. If you are liking it, if you're interested in what's going on, and you feel as though that this podcast and his podcast is adding value, please like, share, and subscribe. Again, we're on with Chris Wirth. He is the CEO and founder of No Quit Living. You can learn more information about Chris Wirth and his organization at noquitliving.com. He's on Twitter at noquitliving, and also on Instagram it's no.quit.living. And what is it on Facebook? What's your Facebook, guys? Just No Quit Living?
Yep, facebook.com/noquitliving.
Also YouTube, we can find you on YouTube as well under No Quit Living.
Yeah, we're not doing much with that yet, but we're actually just hired a gentleman that's going to help me with that. So hopefully we can take that to the next level also.
Well, again, as I said earlier, I've known Chris for a while. I was originally on his podcast. He's a straight shooter. I'm a straight shooter. He's doing some great things, and he's a family man. He's got 3 kids. He's doing a lot of different things, and he's real. And so, I get frustrated and kind of vocal, and sometimes people say, "Man, you're coming across kind of angry." But I do get angry sometimes when there are people out there that are perpetrating themselves in presenting themselves in a way in which they're successful. I'm going to ask Chris next what that means to him, but. They're not real, and Chris is real, and he's doing some real stuff, and I'm watching him do it, and it's happening. Again, you don't just get listed in Inc. On Inc.com as one of the top 8 podcasts randomly. It happens for a reason, because he's doing great things. So again, if you want some more information about Chris, just go to noquitliving.com. So I mentioned success, right? So everybody's interested in success and what that means. For you, Chris, and for the things that you've done up until this point, and how do you define success? I think a lot of people have a trouble defining it. How do you define success?
I want to answer that question in a different way, and in the sense that I think the way that I don't define success personally, I think helps how I actually define it. And the reason I mean is I think a lot of people define success as a monetary goal or a number, or they define success as physical things such as a big house or a car or a vacation home. And don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with being successful, but just having a certain amount of money in your bank account, or having an investment account that has a certain amount of dollars in it, or a $200,000 car, that does not mean that you are successful, and nor does that mean that you are happy. Those things can be in some way a sign of success where you've accomplished something in a field or an endeavor, but that's not how I personally define success. For me, success is very simple. It's defined as being the best version of myself. And the reason I like that question, Mike, is to me, my version and my definition of success always changes. You mentioned being a family man. I have 3 kids, Zachary, Emily, and Mason, and they're 8, 6, and 5, and they are the reason why I do everything that I do. And I don't have a specific financial number or goal that I want to get to. Obviously, I think everybody wants to be more successful than not, and wants to have more money than not having enough money. But for me, it's about leaving a legacy. And for me, it's about my 3 kids. And every single day when I wake up with them or they go to bed, is I want them to know that I tried hard, I worked my butt off, and they have a father that really is dedicated to providing the best that I can for them. And that's really how I personally define my success.
Yeah, I think it's great, man. I think you're right. I think, how I define it is very similar. It's for me, what I say is it's what you want it to be. I also like the fact that you said it's a moving target. A lot of people don't realize that. It's like, okay, so if you hit something, well, what's next? And people say, oh, geez, I never thought about that. So no, I think that's a healthy way to think about it. Happiness, like you mentioned, is such an important thing. And I wanted to kind of, talk to you a little bit about that. About obstacles and adversity. It's not easy, right? I mean, you're doing a lot of great things, and you're running a business, and you get the podcast, and you get the kids. It's not easy, right? I mean, tell us about that, because I think a lot of people, they just see the Instagrams, Twitter, Snapchat images of greatness, and to get into Inc. and to have a top rated podcast and do the things you're doing, there's a lot of obstacles and heartache, isn't there?
I'm so glad you touched on that, because there's a picture that goes around on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter of an iceberg, and the top is success, and you see that outside the water, but underneath the water are failures, obstacles, challenges, being told no. And to your point, I think everybody sees the great pictures. Who posts something online of them failing? Who posts, their bank account being overdrawn? Who posts, a creditor coming after them? No one posts that, right? They post the fun, fluffy things. But to me, it's all about the hard work. And I put my kids to bed every night, spend some time with them, and then I'll have dinner, I'll do my stuff. But I'm always working on different things. And I think what I love about technology in today's day and age is you can always be working on different things. And in no way am I saying work 24/7. I'm actually saying the opposite. You need to take time away. But you do need to commit to the process. And Grant Cardone, who's somebody that I would love to get on my show, talks about the fact that everything he's done and accomplished in life took 10 times more of the phone calls, 10 times more of the effort, and 10 times more of the work. But the reason I loved his book, The 10X Rule, is very simple, because what he said is if you don't hit, or if you're not going to hit your goal, what most people do is they lower their goal. And what he's a fanatic about is what he says is, no, if you're not on target to hit your goal or lose that weight or get out of debt, you don't lower your goal or your objective. You increase the activity. You increase the input, the output. And that's the thing where I think most people miss is they don't realize that to become successful in whatever and however you define it, you need to put in an inordinate amount of work, and you need to be committed to it. And when you do hit those obstacles, because we all do, and when you do get knocked down, it's not a question of when, it's not a question of if. The question is how many times are you going to get up every single time? And that's, to me, the most important thing about everything you and I talked about offline and online is just being committed to the process and never giving up, which is why we named our company and our podcast No Quit Living.
What a great answer, man. And we're both big fans of Grant, and I've been fortunate enough to be on. I was on Power Players a couple of years ago, and he's been on my podcast. So it's awesome stuff to hear too. What you're saying, but when when it happens, right? So when that obstacle, when you get not that when and if moment, it will happen. It's just how many times. When it actually happens, right? Because it happens to all of us, it hurts, right? And so when you put forth a goal and for whatever reason it doesn't happen, it just because you've programmed yourself to be, quote, successful and a positive thinker and all that other stuff, you're still gonna feel it, right?
Oh, 100%. Someone said to me something the other day at the gym. They said, you're always positive, and I always wear my No Quit Living shirt when I work out. In the back it says #accountability. And someone said to me, I've never seen you in a bad mood. And I said, that may be true. I said, but you get knocked down. And I said, I get knocked down all the time, but it's just that you get up and you stay focused. And I could not agree more. I don't think anybody out there can say that everything's perfect and everything goes great. And I interviewed Tucker Max, the best-selling New York Times author, this morning, and he said the exact same thing to me, almost verbatim. I can easily make the intro. He's quite a good dude.
Love his books.
Really guy. But what he said was so clear is I asked him the question is, if you wouldn't mind sharing your no quit story or a personal story about perseverance, and he laughed and he said, which one? And then he went on to say that I don't care what field you're in. I don't care what career, what industry. The most successful people fail more often than everybody else, almost combined. But the difference between them and everybody else is they get up and they do it one more time.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. With you and I think I might have even talked about this in your podcast. For me, the other interesting thing about success, right, is everybody. Nothing's changed. It's just our version of what it takes. And I talk about it is the last 5%, right? It's that little extra effort. But I'm so glad that you were talking about this too, because it's I think so many people just fail to recognize this, is that it is very, very difficult, even for guys like you and me, that we're reading, we're training our brains, we're trying to be positive, we're surrounding ourselves with positive people, doing all this other stuff. But as humans, man, when you get kicked in the stomach, and sometimes it hurts, and sometimes you just lay there, you're like, fuck, but you got to get up, or it's like, what's the alternative? That's for me. I always say, like, what's the alternative? Like, what else are you gonna do? You're going to stay, like I've said sometimes before, there have been times in my career where I just want to just curl up in a ball in my basement and just sit there and do nothing. And by the way, and there have been days when I've done that. But you say, okay, well, stop feeling sorry for yourself and fucking go out and do something, right?
Michael J. Mayer, who's the unbelievably successful author, and he's very successful in the real estate world, he wrote a book, The 7 Levels of Communication, and he was on my podcast, and I think I asked him the question of if he had any parting words, and he said something which was really interesting to me, and I've probably quoted him 50 times since then, if not more. And he said, Chris, one thing I want to tell your listeners, it's obviously what you talk about on your show, No Quit Living, is he said, it is perfectly okay to stop and to reassess where you are and maybe take a different approach or a different angle. He said, that is perfectly normal and completely okay. He said, what is not okay is to give up and to quit. And I've literally repeated that, again, hundreds, if not more times, specifically on my show and also in some of my speaking events that I do. But that just resonated with me, and I think that's the important part, Mike. Like you said, it's okay to sit in your basement for a day and to wallow and just say, this sucks and I'm not happy. But that's very different than completely throwing in the towel and quitting for good. And that's where I think people miss the boat, is it's okay to feel sorry for yourself if you don't make that sale or if you don't get an opportunity to go out with that girl or with that guy. It's okay to be upset because people in general are competitive and you want to be the best of yourself. But what you can't do is you can't let that no, or you can't let that missed opportunity dictate the rest of your life, your month, your quarter, your year. It's important that you take that and you learn from it.
Yeah, just such great advice. And as I'm listening to you and listening to your passion, about it sometimes it saddens me when so many people get to that point, right, where they get knocked down and they truly don't get up, like ever. Like they just give up. And you see these people all over the world, and they're just like, they truly are like the Walking Dead, man. And it's like, it's really sad. And I just hope that they understand that, maybe listening to this podcast or listening to No Quit Living podcast, again, if you want more information, you can just go to noquitliving.com, so that they can understand that it's okay, like you just said, to fall down. It's okay. Like, when I look at the dieting world, right? So many people that go on a diet and then they go off on a bender and then they just completely give up and then they gain more weight than what they had before. It's because they wallow in the fact that they, what some people would call fail. That we learned from Zig Ziglar is just temporary defeats. Like you said, we're all human, right? And just because it didn't work or you fell off the wagon, doesn't mean you should give up, right?
If I could just interject for 1 second, a funny story that I've had a conversation with probably 5 or 6 people that we go to the same gym and kind of work out at the same time in the morning, is you hit it on the head. It's the diet component, right? So you and I go out on a Thursday or a Friday night after work, and let's say I'm on a diet, right? And let's say we drink a few beers and then we order some wings and eat some pizza. So it's now Friday night. And what do most people do? They say, well, I had a really crappy night of eating, so you know what? I'll just give up tonight. I'll eat bad on Saturday, I'll eat bad on Sunday, and I'll start again on Monday. As opposed to the opposite, what you should say is, to your point of lying down in the basement, is I had a really bad Friday night. That's okay. I can't go back and do it. But you know what? Saturday morning, I'm going to get back on the horse. I'm going to go to the gym, get a good workout in, and I'm going to go eat something healthy. And for me, that's one of those 1 degree differences where you just change your mindset a little bit. Again, it's not me saying to you, hey, Mike, I know you haven't been working out. Is it okay if I suggest that you start working out 5 hours a day? Of course you're going to lose weight and get in better shape for the first 4, 5, 6 days, because if you go from doing nothing to something for 5 hours a day, but that's not sustainable, and that's not what true success is. You're going to fall off the horse very quickly, as opposed to exact same situation. If you were not working out, I said to you, hey, Mike, do you think you could walk for 10 to 15 minutes every day for the next week, whether it's outside your house, whether it's in the morning, whether it's during lunch? That's probably something that you can sustain long going and moving forward.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Again, folks, we've been on with Chris Wirth. He's the founder of No Quit Living. You can find him at noquitliving.com. He's on. He's got a great podcast, and he's I think he's doing it on purpose. He's dropping names of some big time people on his podcast. So if you haven't found it, you can subscribe to his podcast. He's got some big players on there, some really, really awesome stuff. You should go to noquitliving.com. You can find him on iTunes. You can also find him on Twitter. It's noquitliving, and then on Instagram it's no.quit.living. You can also find him on Facebook. Chris, I know that I sent you a list of questions. I don't think you really needed them, and I'm kind of glad the way we're going and some of the things that we're doing. But I just thought of this just now, and I think it would be a great way to kind of end this conversation. Chris, tell me your no quit living story, because I don't think I know it.
I don't have one no quit living story, and I know that's not per se the answer you want. And the reason I say that is I have multiple no quit living stories. I always wanted to be an NBA basketball player when I was younger. I always wanted to be a Division I basketball player when I was younger, and that didn't happen for me. But what I did was I played Division III college tennis and college basketball, and I coached college basketball, high school basketball, and AU basketball. And the reason I share that specific story was most people, I think, don't talk about certain things because it's not cool or it's not good to get out there. But for me, it's all about helping others get to the next level. And for me, it comes down to the very specific component that every single one of us, just like you touched on before, it's not a question of if. It's not a question of when. The question is how many times we're going to get hit with that obstacle and that challenge. And I could literally spend the next hour and a half talking about all the different times that I've failed and all the different times that a lot of people say, you know what, I wish I could have gone back and done this different, or I would have changed that. For me, Mike, there's nothing that I would go back and change. And the reason being is every single thing that's happened to me personally has helped me learn and has helped me grow. And I think you asked a question about some of the success that we've had on our podcast. And I got to tell you, I have the best guy, I think, Wes Yee, that helps me with all my editing, does all the behind-the-scenes stuff. And I don't think he gets enough of the credit. But I've also had interns that have helped me get guests. I've also had interns that have helped me do little projects and things. But my point to the question, and it does have a point, is that I could literally go down from high school through now all the opportunities that I got knocked down and all the obstacles that I got knocked down. But the challenge for me back then, and a question I ask on my podcast, is what's the one thing you'd give your 20-year-old version of yourself? What one piece of advice? And I would tell you right now, Mike, for me, I wouldn't have listened at 20 because I was very focused on, I thought I was right, I thought I knew it all. So I guess the long-winded answer to your question is, at this point in my life, I just turned 39. I'm focused on the next 39 years. And the reason I say that is I think everything I've done so far up to this point has been good, but I want to make the next 39 my best. And I just want to thank you for the opportunity for being on your show. Again, I know I've thanked you in the past for being on my show, but for your listeners, Mike was episode number 2 and episode number 3. To this day, you are the only person that has 2 episodes because we went over so much great stuff. So I think that's something that is a tribute to you and our conversation we had. And I don't know if we'll get somebody else that gets 2 episodes on my show.
Hold on a second. So I was number 2 and number 3 so from the very beginning of No Quit Living, I was number 2 and number 3?
You were number 2 and number 3. You're the only person that had 2 episodes.
That's great, but now I got a real problem. Who's number 1, man? Fucking bullshit.
No, I'm saying number 2 and number 3, meaning episode number 2 and
I know. Who was number 1?
Bob Berg.
I'm gonna have words with that guy. When you introduced me, I should be number 1. No, it was awesome, man. No, I'm only kidding. Again, we've been on with Chris Wirth. He is the president and founder of No Quit Living. It's a training, speaking, and coaching company that works with individuals, teams, corporations to help motivate them, inspire them, and also help them be a better version of themselves. I like that because we can always get better. I think a lot of us don't realize that. Even myself, sometimes, we got big egos when we're running companies. We always think that we're the best. We can always get better, and Chris kind of helps people do that. He's been doing it for a long time. If you'd like some more information about Chris Wirth and his company, you can just go to noquitliving.com. You can also find his podcast as well. It's awesome stuff. We were just talking about it. He's been at it actually not too long, but he's been in this world for a long time and has great connections and understands kind of how to connect with people, how to increase what I like to call connection capital. So you can also find his podcast. It's No Quit Living. It's everywhere. I love listening to it on iTunes because I do have the iPhone, and also you can find him on Twitter. It's at No Quit Living, Instagram no.quit.living, and also on Facebook. Chris, one last thing. He's got a book coming out. I'm going to have him on when his book is available. Do you have anything you want to talk about with the book? Or do you want to wait until you come back on? We got anything? We got a title. We got a title. What do we got? I think I think it's gonna be called No Quit Living. I think that's what I'm gonna call it that.
All right. Well, I'm glad you mentioned that because I just want to touch real quick on something to your listeners. Is for those of you that have not read Blueprint to Business, the one thing I want to tell you, Mike, and I have to be completely candid with you, is your openness and honesty in this book about some of your failures and things you've done along the way. I think I've always enjoyed reading your books, and I've read your 2 prior books. But for me, what stood out on this book is you took the gloves off and you said, this is me, this is the pros, the cons, but this is why I'm successful. So I'm really glad you mentioned that book piece because I just want, again, just to tell your listeners out there that if you have not gotten Mike's most recent book, you definitely need to because it's one of the best books I've read in a long time. And again, the reason being is because it's very candid and it's honest. And that's why you and I connected is we kind of get through the fluff and we can joke around and we do have some very fun conversations about jerky boys and other stuff that we like to laugh and have fun. But for me, my book is all going to be about accountability and self-accountability. So I might now just, I think, legal purposes have to call it No Quit Living just because you basically said that's the title of it. Well,
when it comes out, I'd love to have you back on and talk to you a little bit about it. And I guess one last thing, too, is that we talked a lot about a lot of different things here, and it's really interesting, too. I'm sure I'm not the only one, but, having a podcast for me wasn't something that I really planned on. I just happened, I'm sitting here. I have an entire production studio, and it was just an idea that someone else gave me. And for me, it's built not only great value for others, but really for me, and then friendships, man. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we've developed friendships with people that I would have never met otherwise. So, you know what? If you've thought about starting a podcast, if you're interested in it, check out mine. Check out, obviously, if you listen to it, you're checking out mine, but check out Chris's and just check out others. There's great resources out there. You just Google how to start a podcast. I think John Lee Dumas, who was on yours, I think he even has a platform out there where you can start your own podcast. And for me, it's just a lot of fun. I talked earlier about making money. Like, I don't make money doing this. I know other people do, but I think it's just awesome just to be able to sit there and talk to people like you,
if I could just say one last thing on that, I'm glad you mentioned that is my partner with my podcast, Wes, and I, we're actually launching a podcast course. And the reason being is, to your point, I've connected with so many amazing people, some like yourself that have become good friends, other people that have become colleagues and things. But for me, I wanted to give back in some ways. So if any of your listeners want to connect or want to get some information on how to start a podcast, I'll give my personal email address, which is chris@noquitliving.com. And I'd love to respond to people. And again, that's how you and I connected way back when. So again, it's chris@noquitliving.com.
Yeah, you know what? And I would definitely make sure you write that down. Again, it's chris@noquitliving.com because this guy obviously knows what he's doing. So thanks for being on, Chris. I really appreciate it. Thanks for giving out the information. And again, folks, I'm going to do what we had talked about earlier. If you like this episode, if you're interested in what we're doing, if you feel as though that it's added value, please like, share, and subscribe to it. And also, go to Chris's podcast, No Quit Living. I'm sure you're going to find some great stuff there. Again, my name is Michael Alden. This has been another just fun episode of the Alden Report, and we'll see you soon. Today's episode is brought to you in part by Coinbase, America's largest digital currency exchange with over 13 million active users. Folks, if you're following me on Snapchat, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, you've probably seen me talking about Bitcoin or cryptocurrency. It is changing the world. It is changing the way we buy and sell things. You know, you probably heard me talk about just a couple years ago, Bitcoin was valued at just under $400, and today, as I speak, it's valued at over $9,700. There is still time to get in, and Coinbase has worked out a special arrangement with our listeners where if you text Coinbase, that's COINBASE, to 555-888, again, text Coinbase, COINBASE, to 555-888. Learn how you can get $10 worth of free Bitcoin. It's free to join, and it's America's largest digital currency exchange. Again, text Coinbase to 555-888 and learn how to get $10 worth of free Bitcoin.